Okay, we are getting so close to getting to that quadratic formula. Here we go. We're almost there. Let's look at 8-8, completing the square. If you have a trinomial, x squared plus bx plus c, when a trinomial quadratic is a perfect square, there is a relationship between b and c. This is the relationship. B divided by 2 squared. So the quotient of b divided by 2 squared equals c. X squared plus bx is not a perfect square. There's no c value there. However, using the above formula, we can create a perfect square. You will take standardized tests and it'll say solve by completing the square. This is what they're talking about. Let's take a look at it. X squared plus 10x. It is not perfect. There's no c value there. And even if there was, it's not squared. So I take my formula. B over 2 squared equals c. My b value is a 10. So I take my 10, I substitute it in for b. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared equals 25. I place it in my equation. X squared plus 10x plus 25. I have created a perfect square trinomial. We can now solve this new equation using the square root. What are my steps? Well, I start with my equation, x squared plus bx plus c. I use my squaring formula. I complete the square by adding b over 2 squared, which is really c, because that equals c, to both sides. If I add it to both sides, so in the example I just did, it was 25. I would need to add that 25 to both sides of the equation. Now I can factor my perfect square, take the square root of each side, and I can write two equations using plus or minus. Remember, when you work with square roots, you have two answers. You have the positive and the negative for square roots. Of course, we're going to look at one. Example, let's go slow. X squared plus 14x equals 15. Well, there's no c value. Well, yeah, I could subtract 15 and move it to the other side. Well, then it would be equal to 0. We don't want that. Go ahead and leave it like this. My b value is 14. I place it in my equation. 14 divided by 2 is 7 squared. C equals 49. Add 49 to both sides. This is the key right here. Add it to both sides. I now have a perfect square trinomial on the left equals 64. X plus 7 squared equals 64. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 7 equals plus or minus 8. You'll remember this all the way back from factoring. That's why chapter 7 on factoring was so difficult and so important. So I have plus or minus 8. That means x plus 7 could equal positive 8, or x plus 7 could equal negative 8. X can equal 1, or x can equal negative 15. Oops, hold on. Sorry, I didn't realize that my screen was not showing you the bottom layer. Okay, there we are. You can have either answer, okay? I'm just going to jump back and make sure I didn't cut off the previous slides. No, we're okay. Sorry about that. Here we go. Let's do another one. X squared plus 10x equals negative 9. I need to make it a perfect square. There is no c here, so I am going to use my formula. Even if there was a c here, do you realize that if it wasn't perfect, I would want to move it to the other side and create a perfect square? b over 2, that means 10 over 2. I'm back to this 25. I add 25 to both sides. I'm going to have x plus 5 squared equals 16. Square root of both sides. X plus 5 equals plus or minus 4. Notice how convenient it is that all of these are coming out to equal, simple numbers, perfect squares. Of course, they're going to create perfect squares because we're creating them, but you know that in real life you're going to get some more complicated questions, but not yet. We're just at the beginning of this. You're going to be okay freshman year and doing Algebra 1. I have x plus 5 equals 4, or x plus 5 equals negative 4. That means that my answer is x equals negative 1 or x equals negative 9. You have two answers. In this case, 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Here's a problem. You cannot have a coefficient of x squared when doing this. So I must divide the entire equation by 3 to eliminate that 3 before I can start. That means I have to divide every term by 3. It has to be in x squared plus bx plus c form. You may not have a coefficient of x squared. Life just became way more complicated just now. I'm left with x squared minus 5/3 x minus 2/3 equals 0. Add 2/3 to both sides. I don't want that 2/3 over there. I want to be able to create my perfect square. So I move my 2/3 over to the right. Finally, I am left with x squared minus 5/3 x equals 2/3. Now I can create my perfect square. Negative 5/3 is my b value. So I take negative 5/3. Do you see where I am? Follow me over here where the green is. I take my negative 5/3 divided by 2 and I square it. Negative 5/3, which is the same as saying times 1/2. When you divide by 2, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. So divide by 2 means multiply by the reciprocal 1 over 2. That gives me negative 5 over 6 squared. Negative 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. Okay, that was complicated. You aren't going to just learn that by listening to me one time. You need to go back over this. You need to look at your notes on the drive and look at them slowly, one at a time, in order to comprehend this. This is a big deal. I now add 25/36 to both sides. On the right-hand side, I'm going to have to use a common denominator. I can't just add these together, but my end result is that I get 1 and 13/36. But on the left, I factor this, and I end up with x minus 5/6 squared. Notice that relationship, the 5/6, there it was, 5/6 squared. Take the square root of both sides. That means that x minus 5/6 equals plus or minus 1 1/6. And now you're going to solve it twice. This was way more complicated than you wanted to know about, but it's important. This is algebra. Algebra is difficult, but fun. So have fun with it. Play with the numbers, move them around. See if you can do this one by yourself. Go back and start from the beginning and see if you can solve this. One last problem for you. 4x squared minus 4x plus 9. I want to move this 9 to the other side because I'm going to create my perfect square. So move it over. Now divide everything by 4. X squared minus x equals negative 9/4. My b value is a negative 1, invisible negative 1. Create my perfect square, 1/4. Add 1/4 to both sides. I know you're confused. I know you're saying, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding. Obviously, in a classroom, we would go over this for a long time, but we'll do that during one of our group meets. Right now, I need you to just look at it and try to do it yourself on paper. Once you do it, you'll realize it's not so bad. I know you think that that's crazy, but it is true. Add 1/4 to both sides. I now have my perfect trinomial, which is x minus 1/2 squared. Negative 8/4 reduces to negative 2. Take the square root of both sides. Guess what? You have a huge problem. The square root of negative 2, it's never, ever going to happen. You cannot have a square root of a negative value. There is no solution. So you don't have to solve this one. I hope you enjoyed. I know it is hard. There's nothing to enjoy, but I love numbers and you know that. So try to enjoy. Go back. Do it one more time. Bye, everybody. Let's make sure you saw this whole equation. There we go.